because we have a few things, and I do need a nomination for the chair of this committee. So there's only a few of you, and
Tim will nominate.
Lisa and Sam are not contenders for it. So if Walter can flip a coin for me.
For what?
The chair.
Oh, seriously?
I hear a nomination for Maureen. Second?
This is good.
Second.
Sure, second.
No discussion? Congratulations.
No, I mean,
I'm so honored. Do you need the agenda?
Thank you, Maureen.
Since you're running the meeting?
I've got it right here.
Okay.
Now, that's operations or teaching?
Teaching and learning.
Teaching and learning, that's
Yes.
right, I knew that.
Yes.
Okay, so we're starting now.
Yeah.
Agenda review and disposition.
I have nothing to add or take off.
Okay, Mr. Price, NASD visit update?
Sure. So the faculty leaders have been working on the school summary report, and we're halfway through editing that, and hopefully that will be done in the next week or so. The school improvement plan is part of that. That is completed and finished, so that should be uploaded. So we're just, again, working with the principal to wait and hear from the visiting chair about the exact schedule to know how many people will be coming. We don't know that yet. But they will be coming October 25th and 26th, I believe are the dates, or 26th and 27th. I'm not, I think it's a Sunday, Monday, when they're coming. But we're on schedule with the reports, and everything should be good to go.
Bob, what's the commitment from the board for that visit?
Well, that's what, normally, again, on the Sunday, there was a meeting with the full board would meet with members of the committee. I don't know under the new rules that they're doing it in this new way, what that will look like, and we haven't heard from the actual chairperson about that. We do have a sample schedule that was used in one of the other visitations at another school, but again, that was pre-COVID-19, so I don't know what impact that will have on the schedule.
Well,
What's that date again?
It's October 25th and 26th, so it's a Sunday, Monday. And typically, the board meets with the team on a Sunday night, so it's a tricky schedule. And it's pretty intensive sometimes, but I have a feeling they're just gonna limit the amount of person-to-person interaction, but there will be some sort of board obligation to participate in, whether it's the opening and some questionnaires and whatnot. So we'll let you know as soon as they let us know what the COVID procedures are.
Okay.
Okay?
Any other questions for Bob? Okay, SAT testing routine?
So, right now with the seniors who were supposed to do the SAT testing in the spring of last year, of course, that got postponed due to school being canceled, or, you know, going into remote world. So this year's seniors will test on October 14th. That'll be a paper pencil version of the SAT. So we've also, last week, the counselors reached out to the 22 or 23 seniors that are in remote, saying here's the date that we're going to be administering the SAT with essay to those students. And we're also going to be doing the regular PSAT that day for juniors. That's the National Merit Scholarship qualifying test as well. So those two assessments will be given on the 14th, and we've reached out to the remote learners. And I said right now there's 150 or 151 students that will be or should be taking the SAT on that date.
Bob, will those take place here at the high school?
It will, yeah. I'm still working out the schedule of moving things around, but taking the classes on the right side of the north wing for the seniors doing the SAT. We do have, I think, 21 students that are doing two-day testing with accommodations. So working around where those people are going to be. And the PSAT we're going to hold in the gymnasium. While we're still, you're going to be running school for 9th and 10th graders and 11th graders who aren't taking the PSAT, they're going to have a regular school day. So it's coordinating all of it around that on the 14th.
Any questions for Bob? Okay. Enrollment report?
It's me. You want your hand out?
I got this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Give you time to digest.
We're entering our third week. Just a couple of updates today. Yesterday was our first day with the new bell schedule that you guys had worked out for us in your MOU. We had that concern with the break, and plus there was some elementary concerns on buses getting there in time, so it worked out great. Kids have been absolutely outstanding. They've had plenty of time to get down. We allow the students to eat their room. They totally understood and headed right back to class. The hallways are absolutely outstanding when you go through. Very, very limited use. When the kids do go use the facilities, whatever, they're covered, they're using their masks. I am going to take you guys on a short tour on, let you see a couple of rooms and how they're spaced out. Lunch has been great because we've been able to move these kids throughout the building, third floor, main floor, the vocational piece here, the career tech piece here, and the use of outside. Many of our classes, again, still you'll see with the great weather, you'll see a lot of classes outside. And the teachers have been very, very respectful and mindful of allowing the kids mask break. A lot of them will take their kids out for a good 15, 20 minutes to give them that time. They've also prepared the kids if we do go into remote, so what that looks like, and so we're on the same page here. But knock on wood, in school has been outstanding. Discipline, minimal. Absentee, very minimal. On that, we monitor that too very closely.
Just to jump in on the absenteeism, we have had kids, you know, when you go out with any symptoms at this point, there is you're out for 10 days or until the symptoms subside or a negative test. So we really we talked with the hospital today just about tweaking some of the process as far as parents getting results. It seems that students that were sent out on last Wednesday or Thursday weren't getting cleared to come back until Tuesday this week. So there is a longer lag than the week before where we were seeing more than 24 to 48 hours. So we did tweak some stuff with the hospital and the nurses, and I think just a little bit more communication to get our kids back in. That's the concern, is having kids out for those long stretches of time for 10 days at a time. So they've been great, as well as the pediatricians working with us.
A few points I'll follow up on Carla is Wednesday, Thursday. Tomorrow we're doing picture day. That'll take place in the chorus and band room, and I'm going to do that through the English department. It'll be well managed through Todd, Randy, and that piece. Also, I did send out an alert to the entire high school community, canceling obviously the mock schedule night. That's one thing we won't be able to accommodate. We did have student elections last week, so the class officers have been elected, and they're working with their advisors. I'm sure they're going to try to get creative or come up with some kind of ideas around, homecoming and what that looks like on that piece. We had our first golf match yesterday, which was very successful at Dallas match. We had one away with no issues. We will be having events here soon next week. We get soccer or field hockey, and I think our first football game is the 26th. It's a Saturday. It's home. That schedule's been finalized. Most of our games are home. You can look on the webpage, and the schedule will be here on that piece too. So if you take a look at my paper I gave you, this is updated daily. It changed. I think last time I looked, we had 535. It has increased to 545. And WO should be WI, I'm sorry. That's with me, that's
Wisconsin.
That's Wyoming.
Why?
Wyoming. And again, One piece I do want to say, through Bob's office, the guidance department, they are tracking the remote students. And we haven't heard from them. The guidance counselor have reached out. We will have a stronger idea of the students. Probably 30 students. We still don't know when they say they're remote, what their remote looks like. So we are following that up with that. With students who haven't reported to school, I've given them a week or 2 weeks, then I've contacted the local authorities to hunt them down if they're not in district or they have not entered another school. So these are real numbers. They work out extremely well within the building. It's not a big crowd, and I can answer questions if you have any.
I have one question about what Kyla mentioned about kids going home if they're headache or something. Did you say when the symptoms subside, that's one option for them to come, or do they need to be tested?
So they have to have a test, a negative test for the 10 days. Now, some families have opted for the 10 days, which we do discourage, obviously, but most families are taking the test and then trying to get back. And then, because some kids are going home, runny nose, and it's the beginning of the school year, so we're trying to get them back as quick as possible. But that's guidance from DHHS, which is following that piece of it.
Okay.
That's my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And will we have a non-public
Yes,
session?
we do need non-public.
And do you want it now or after the other meeting? Now?
This would be for this committee now, yeah.
All right. Any other questions before we go into non-public? Do I hear a motion to go into non-public session?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm behind you.
Thank you. Yes.
It's 5:04. We will, so just for participants, Kathy is not going to sit on this one. We have Christy, Roger, Sam, Bonnie is not here. Thank you. And Peter. So the first thing we need to do is have a nomination for the chair.
I already, we were talking about this before. I think that you and Roger are the two likely choices.
We were talking about this before.
Correct.
Yeah.
Christy and I were.
Did you?
And Christy is vice chair of the entire board.
I'm exempt.
Roger, do I hear a second?
I will second that.
Any discussion? Congratulations, Roger. The committee's all yours.
What a guy.
All right, I'll put the signs up on pause. Agenda review this position.
I have nothing to add or remove.
Looks like we have the sexual harassment policy first reading.
So you'll find that the policy, which was developed by the New Hampshire School Boards Association, attached to the agenda. You'll also find a one-page bulleted summary of the policy, and Bruce just passed around. And I just want to review this a little bit, and still have some time to obviously digest it before we go to the full board meeting. But I would like this committee to recommend that this be approved in one reading at the next. I know it's out of the ordinary. It is law already. So this is basically the boilerplate language from the law that came down from the federal side. So this was a 2,000-page law that was summarized into a 19-page policy, which I really tried to summarize into a one-page bullet so you don't get too overwhelmed with some of the language. But I will just read through the bullets real quick, just so you have an idea of what's in it, and if there's any further questions, let me know. So, like I said, it's 2,000 pages long. It only addresses sexual harassment, not other aspects of Title IX, which are available in our other policies. This policy, once adopted, will replace the existing sexual harassment policy, which is vastly different than our first one. It provides enhanced protections for both the victim and the respondent involved in the formal sexual harassment complaints. The new policy provides an updated definition. It outlines what the supportive measures are. It outlines the responsibilities of the Title IX coordinator, investigators, and decision makers. There is training for all of the staff. This is being already done over the summer and is being done now. It outlines retaliation is prohibited and conflict of interest. How policy must be made available to students, staff, and families. Record keeping is reviewed. Overview of how reports of sexual harassment may be filed. Investigations cannot occur without a formal complaint being filed by a student, parent, or the Title IX coordinator. Disciplinary action cannot occur until the grievance process is complete or if no formal complaint is filed. Title IX coordinator can file a formal complaint on behalf of the complainant, but only if not doing so would make them deliberately indifferent to known sexual harassment. Formal complaints may be filed in mail, in person, or by email. So my role in this as a superintendent would only be for appeals. In the Title IX district coordinator, who is Dana Andrews at the SAU, and then there are Title IX coordinators in each building as well. The superintendent will hear all appeals. Steps after receiving a formal complaint are listed, the investigation requirements, the responsibility of the decision maker, and the standard. Do you want to review, Bob, real quickly, that last bullet there? Do you have that, the standard of preponderance?
So the standard of evidence, in the law, the way that the federal government dictated is you have a choice about what the standard of evidence would be, but whatever standard that you choose is for all parties under that. So you can't have one standard for students, another standard for employees. So the School Boards Association was recommending that more likely preponderance of the evidence and more likely than not standard. And that would be for all parties involved in any type of sexual harassment.
And then again, it goes through in-depth appeals and then informal resolution. So, like I said, just so you know, as a new superintendent, I hope that I don't have many policies that are this ridiculously long. We like to summarize them and kind of be overarching, but this is something that's pretty much dictated to us.
Can someone file for a student who doesn't want to file, that a parent calls and say, Jimmy's been being bothered by whatever, and even if Jimmy doesn't want to do anything, or Jenny doesn't want to do anything, the parent can say, I want to file a complaint?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else? So I know it's a lot, but like I said, most districts are, their recommendation from the New Hampshire School Boards Association is to consider adopting this on the first read. Because it's already, we already have to follow the law anyways.
Okay.
It's already a law.
Right. What if there's a school board who wanted to take something out or put something different in? So you can't take something out because it's already.
So there's
the
pieces
law.
of it that you can't take out because it is a law, yeah.
Okay. And if we as a school board said, well, I don't think this is enough in this situation, why wouldn't we want to look at it in depth and
You can, so what I recommend is you adopt the boilerplate law, and if there's anything you want to tweak above and beyond that, then we do that at a later meeting. That's what I would suggest, just so we can be in compliance with that piece.
at what time, at what point do we need to be in compliance with the?
Now, I mean, it's already in law,
Because
yes.
it's already established. All right.
Yeah, so it's already been a law. They just, but it was one of those that came out super fast. New Hampshire School Board Association just sent this out, so they're like, expedite the process if you can, and then if you want to do anything to tweak it above and beyond that, then you do that at a later date. You doing something?
No, it just became effective August 14th.
14th, that's supposed to say around, all right, 13th.
That's right.
Just as a procedural point, would you prefer to have non-committee members say the questions for the full board? Or now, I guess is the question. Proceed.
So typically, what would happen in previous years? Were not.
I believe, if I recall, Phil, that any of the board members could come and participate and ask questions at the committee level before. I think that's what has been our practice.
Yeah.
So then may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
The disciplinary action cannot occur until the grievance process is complete. What does that mean as far as the perpetrator is concerned? Can the perpetrator be removed from school prior to the investigation, and how we get into that?
So it's a pretty complicated process as far as that piece,
Yeah, I remember,
because
yeah.
we have to be very careful with juveniles as well, and kids under 18, as well as accommodations, and providing accommodations to somebody that's not accused at this point. So it's saying, am I answering that correctly?
Yeah, so the supportive measures can take place without a formal complaint being filed, and supportive measures can take place from day one. However, any disciplinary action needs to be held until it's gone through the process and there's been an investigation. And then there's a whole process that's laid out in the policy, but until a determination is made by the decision maker, discipline cannot follow until that happens.
So it's interim accommodations for the most part until it's done, which we already do anyways, if this comes up.
Okay, thank you.
So for action, we'd like us to present this at the next board meeting and encourage the first reading.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the sexual harassment policy before we move to the end of year finance review from Dan? Dan, you're up.
So I just brought Dan tonight because at the last meeting I had a chance to send out the packet for the end of year review, including your balances at the end of the year. We did not have time to review it as we were signing the MS-25. But I wanted Dan to explain a little bit to you the numbers in regards to where we ended up as far as at the end of the school year. So,
thank you.
Dan?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So what I've handed out for you is a summary report in a similar format that you received in previous years. And I thought it might be most important to go through the first page. And we can certainly go through all the pages, however much time you have. For the year that ended June 30th, we have an unreserved fund balance of $629,174. That's net of a $292,000 retained fund balance as you authorized in the spring. There was a vote to retain the maximum amount available. And those funds stay with the district. The $292,000 stay with the district. And there's a prescribed set of uses that if you needed to access those funds during this current fiscal year, it can be done so without a special meeting of the legislative body. It can be done so by the board holding a hearing, and there, as I say, a prescribed set of uses. The $629,000 unreserved fund balance becomes a revenue in the new fiscal year that will be counted as a revenue this fall by the Department of Revenue Administration when setting tax rates for our member towns. So in addition to the other revenues we count on, such as tuition or Medicaid or a variety of other grants or other sources, that $629,000 fund balance will be an additional revenue in the current fiscal year. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? So one of the things that I do want to point out is I think that this spring a somewhat higher number may have been discussed and projected. And I wanted to give you some of the rationale for why it's lower than we originally anticipated. And that has to do with the cleaning up, if you will, of the funds that were in what's called the Capital Reserve Fund or Fund CTE project. The CTE project, while it primarily occurred 2 years ago, there were some lingering expenses and lingering transactions that really completed during the previous fiscal year. And the net point I want to make is that the project cost the general fund, as in our general fund, not the money from the state, or any grants, but the project cost the general fund about $187,000 more than was originally anticipated. And that had to do primarily with a calculation by the Department of Education as to what portion of the project they were going to fund at the 75% and what portion they weren't. Originally, the project was envisioned as a big number, and the state pays 75% of it, and the 25% left over is what the district will pay. But as the project came to fruition, the state said, well, we're going to pay 75% of the CTE project, and they did a square footage calculation and calculated that really of all the square footage that was renovated or added, what have you, only 80% of that square footage was CTE square footage. So they paid 75% of the 80% of the building construction costs. All the equipment that was added and other improvements for the CTE programs, it was the full 75% of the full 100% cost. But that's the nature of that $187,000 cost increase to the general fund. So that's why this number of $629,000 is about $200,000 less than was originally anticipated. So the primary revenues were fairly on target, and the primary reason for the decrease was cost savings in other areas, largely due to the schools being closed. You know, for example, I'll give you the example of athletics. With no spring sports and winter sports being somewhat curtailed, the athletics budget saved about $120,000. So you know, obviously our budget is 30 pages of individual lines, and there's a variety of things that added up to that number of savings in a variety of places. The second page of the report I handed you goes through a line-by-line accounting of budget versus actual on our revenues, and we can certainly talk about that if anyone has any questions. The third page would be a summary of the food service program and how that ended up for the year. And the last page would be the status of our capital reserve funds at year end, which are fairly minimal at this point. Anyone have any, does anyone want to go into greater detail, or anyone have any questions?
So, there's quite a difference with the Medicaid reimbursement. What happened there?
So, in August of 2019, the Medicaid Commissioner and the Department of Human Services put down new rules in place. I want to say they use the term emergency rules. And what it basically meant was that for any of the services that we historically got Medicaid reimbursement for, we could no longer claim for reimbursement unless those services were provided under a doctor's order or prescription.
Right.
And
so a speech pathologist or an occupational therapist is no longer able to sign off on this.
So they kind of changed courses midstream?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
They changed courses after the fiscal year was already underway. And it affected all our districts. And we accounted for some of it by reducing, on September 1st, as you may recall, we submit something called the updated statement of estimate projection of revenues, excuse me. So when the budget is built in the fall and approved in March, that's with estimated revenues. You update those estimates for September 1st for the tax rate setting season, and we did bring those estimates down, so it didn't create the enormity of the shortfall it may have, but it was still short of what was budgeted.
Dan, this big unreserved fund balance, it's going to be good this year for taxes.
Well, it's gonna compound what you may call a rebound effect. You know, I think it's very important, and we tried to talk about this in some of our spring meetings when we saw these fund balances starting to materialize. It's going to be very important this fall and this coming election season, if you will, February, March, during our meetings, when we compare the budget and the tax rate of the new budget for FY22 with the tax rate for the bills that just went out a couple of months prior this fall, and there's probably going to be a significant swing. I think it's important that we present that both with and without the effect of this extraordinary circumstance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We say, look, here's what the tax rate change really is going to be, but this portion of it is due to the extraordinary fund balance from the spring and the fiscal year that was burdened by the pandemic, right? Here's what it would be if we didn't have that effect. So we saved you a little bit of money, but we're continuing to operate and in our appropriate way, and that's why the number for next year is what the number is.
So Peter, as we prepare the budget for next year, that'll be our sounding board when I come in here and study, what this
I think
looks like.
people will understand.
Correct, we talked about this,
Crazy.
we talked this about in London, at the end of the year, what this was, effect was gonna have in this community.
Any other questions for Dan?
All right.
We've already had the tour of the building, thank you very much. Do we have a reason to go into non-public for this meeting?
No.
So our future meetings are going to be October 20th for this subject, November 17th, and 12/15. So can I entertain a motion to resolve?
Yeah.
Can I have a motion from one of the committee members to dissolve?
Yeah.
Not you have to dissolve the whole committee, right? Just
No, it's to
retire for the evening.
For the time.
Okay, yeah. I'll say.